What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston. Just got home from a big day of Celtics events. Started the morning at a card signing event at Big Night Live with Hugo Gonzalez, who has been in Boston, is kind of acclimating to the city, and was meeting a bunch of fans who had lined up eager to meet him. But spend most of the day at the Reggie Lewis Center, actually, literally a couple steps away from where I went to college at Northeastern, where Payton Pritchard was hosting a 1v1 basketball tournament. And there were multiple divisions. There was youth girls, there were high school girls, there were youth boys, high school boys, and then adult men. I was actually going to play if there was an adult women's division. I would have gotten killed, but there ended up not being enough women that wanted to play. So if there are women listeners to this podcast, sign up next year so we can play. Because I would love to compete. I think it would be funny to like make a video of that. And I would get destroyed because honestly, watching the high school girls play, that concerned me because they would all be me as well. So, in any case, it was a very cool event. There were raffles, they were giving away Celtics tickets. Peyton was meeting fans, signing things, taking photos. And it's just, I love basketball. Like, I got into this business because I love being around the game. I used to work in politics. I worked in environmental policy. I think a lot of you know that, but I love being around this sport and in a gym. And when I finished playing basketball, I played high school and then I played club at Northeastern. I was like, when am I ever going to be in a gym again? And this job has allowed me to do that. And today was a great example of being able to spend a day in the gym for work. So shout out to you all for listening to this podcast, for reading my work to enable me to continue to be able to do that as a job. I also got a chance to catch up with Peyton at the end for quite a bit of time. He was very generous with his time. Really, he's always great with the media. I'll just like note that. Maybe it's because he knows I see the future for him. But I think he's just very patient and always kind of willing to give his time. So we had a nice conversation both about everything that was going on today at the event, but then also about a couple other things that I'll talk about, and we'll play some sound bites from it as well. So we'll have the full conversation kind of throughout this podcast today. Talk to him about next year's expectations, both on a team level and then also on an individual level, because I know there's been a lot of chatter about whether he's going to be a starter, whether he's going to come off the bench. I think the big question is if you keep the roster as it currently stands, it's him or Anthony Simons that would start alongside Derek White. And I know some fans feel really passionate about it. I never like obsess over the starting lineup. So I don't think it's like that interesting of a discourse, but it's one of the things that we can think about right now, right? It's August, middle of August. So there's not that much new things going on. Jaylen Brown also had an event today. It was in Worcester, and it was a shoe event. Boston Got Soul. He was hosting it with 741 Performance. I was not able to make it because I was at Pritchard's, which I was trying to figure out which one I should go to, but I've gone to a lot of Jaylen Brown events this summer, so I figured this was a good opportunity to see Peyton and to kind of also just kind of check out this event that I love one-on-one also. I like shooting off the dribble better, so for me this was like a basketball nirvana, and it was for a lot of the kids too. So first, let's start. I wanted to talk a little bit about the event and kind of what Peyton had to say about it. And honestly, like the biggest thing that stood out to me is that kids are getting so much better at basketball than they used to be. Like there were two girls, there were middle school girls, who quite literally couldn't miss. Like neither could stop the other. They were both playing good defense, but they're so much more talented. Their footwork so much better, and you can see the influence of like the Steph Currys and the Caitlin Clarks of the world, because everybody is trying to incorporate like that step back three, the logo shots, and they were hitting them too. So it was a lot of fun. Peyton was kind of in the background watching, cheering the girls on, cheering the boys on. And here's what he had to say about just this tournament and why he put it together and what the goal is moving forward.
Mike and Marky did a good job of creating the thing. Obviously, I gave him like the vision of what I wanted, and it's still in the growing process of it. But for me, I think it's just it's another way for kids, and obviously there's the men's league, but like I think it's great for the kids just to come out and compete, especially in the communities outside of Boston, like in Roxbury, Dorchester. So like, there's a lot of good athletes, but really just to come out and see good talent and create an atmosphere of basketball.
And then one-on-one, I know I asked you this last summer too, but like, is there something about the one-on-one game that you particularly like? I know you played a lot.
To you and yourself, you know what I mean? Like, you can't blame nobody. It's just like if you lose, it's on you. Like, It's not your teammates were bad or you weren't good enough or anything like that. It was just like you ain't making shots or getting stops. It's only on you. So it just kind of singles the sport into an individual sense. You get to really see who has like this like true competitive spirit.
Have you liked what you've seen today?
For sure, it was a great turnout. So, and hopefully it just gets better and better.
You have a vision for where you want it to grow?
No, not necessarily. I don't have like a. I just wanted to keep getting bigger and bigger, and I add into it, adding new things, new wrinkles, and like, you know, making it just really the biggest thing to me is just creating this like incredible atmosphere with it, and it just being about the kids.
So I don't know where this is going to grow. I think that one-on-one is like a huge sport, and the culture around it is changing for girls as well, where like growing up, I feel like boys would always be like, oh, I'll play you one-on-one right now. And that wasn't really a thing with girls. Like I would always be like, oh, after practice, who wants to play one-on-one? And like nobody really ever wanted to play, even though there were a lot of girls that were a lot better than me that would have destroyed me. But it's just like not the nature. I grew up playing against my brother and my dad. So it was very much ingrained in me to love one-on-one basketball. But it was very cool. And I think for people who want to check it out next year, you can also just attend as a fan. So you don't necessarily have to participate in the tournament. And there was a lot of like vendors and a lot of things going on. So it was very cool. But I think Payton, like a lot of guys, is trying to find a way to impact the community of Boston, to further connect with the city. Payton was drafted here, right? He's been here for the last, how many years has it been now? 4 years? And he was telling me that he spent most of the summer on the Cape, but then he's also been at the Auerbach Center working out quite a bit. He went back to Oregon for a little and competed in a Pro-Am tournament. He was saying he just loves playing in Pro-Am tournaments. He played in one in Canada. You may have seen he scored 68 points in that one. And so he just views it as an opportunity to work on his game, try out different things. And truthfully, like, when you think about it, why wouldn't an NBA player want to play in a Pro-Am tournament? Because you could play organized basketball against elite competitors. And he said like there were NBA refs reffing the Canadian one, and they take care of the guys and everything. So it's a lot of fun for them, and he enjoys it very much. So I think that Pro-Am reputation is probably here to stay. So that's been his summer. He was in Spain for a bit, running a basketball camp, and it was actually a cool story. He runs it alongside a friend of his that he grew up with, almost like a brother, and he was an exchange student. This guy, Pablo, would stay with him for 5 months a year. Then Pritchard would stay in Spain and would live with him. And now they're hosting a basketball camp together in Spain. So I thought that was really cool. I didn't know that whole background story. But you may have seen Sublime is the camp that he hosted. So he's having a basketball camp in Boston, but then he's also hosted a camp in Spain this summer as well. So a lot of these guys had longer summers. I've reported a lot on what Jaylen Brown's been up to in the community, doing a lot of things in Boston. And so this was kind of Payton's big event. He's also been hosting youth camps in and around the Boston area. He's hosted a few already, and he has a few more coming up. I'm sure you can Google like Payton Pritchard basketball camps. And if you have a kid of that age, sign them up. I'm sure it'd be a lot of fun. But I was talking to him about like what his mindset is at these camps, because I always think about it like if an NBA player comes to camp, like, and they tell me something, I would be like, okay, I'm going to do all these things. But he said that he doesn't actually try to change their mindset or like become a motivational speaker. He kind of sees like there are some kids that just have it and some kids don't, and that's not going to change. Like as far as the mindset piece, and that's not going to change just because of what he says on a given day. So he more thinks from a basketball standpoint, giving them drills, giving them pointers. And he said if there's a couple campers that learn from that and take that with them, like that's a huge win for him. So yeah, it was cool to kind of learn a little bit more about that. And everybody's been up to different things this summer. I talked about, Derek White started this podcast. He's been in Colorado. It's a great podcast, by the way. You should check it out if you're looking for more Celtics content, the White Noise podcast with Derek White. And then obviously Tatum has been rehabbing his Achilles injury, and was a little bit in St. Louis hosting his camp. I'll have something coming out about his impact on St. Louis shortly as well, because I think it's one of those things that people know, that Tatum does a lot in St. Louis, but it hasn't quite been like thoroughly reported on yet. So TBD on that. But first, a quick message from our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports, Combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports takes into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So I talked a bit with Payton about the camp and his vision and his love for one-on-one basketball. And then I also talked to him a little bit about the Celtics. And obviously, everybody knows this is a really weird offseason for the Celtics. Just to recap, like they lost Drew Holiday via trade, Kristaps Porzingis via trade, Jason Tatum to an Achilles injury that I think is most likely going to keep him off the floor for all of next season. Al Horford, presumptively, it hasn't happened yet, but he's going to the Warriors by all accounts. Luke Cornett already signed with the Spurs. So they've pretty much lost, that's 5 of their top 8 rotation players, top 9 rotation players. And it all is kind of hinging on Jaylen Brown, Payton Pritchard, Derek White, and then what can you get from the other guys? Can Sam Hauser scale it up? Can Amias Queta really bloom as a starting center? Obviously, a couple of free agency acquisitions, which I don't view any of them as like these guys are going to be saviors. I don't think that Anthony Simons is going to necessarily change everything, but obviously he's a very talented player. Chris Boucher, I thought that was a great signing, $3.3 million, like good deal. Actually, Payton and Chris played together, so he's somebody that I talked to Payton about this today as well, but he's somebody that he is excited to reunite with. He said his motor is just insane. Like he plays so hard, he runs the floor, that he's going to be a really good fit. So there are a lot of like different players, maybe Luka Garza has a great year. Maybe Jordan Walsh has a breakout season. Maybe Baylor Shireman becomes a 13 points a game kind of guy. Like, I don't know who it's going to be. And honestly, like, I can try to predict, but my guess is as good as anybody's. Like, I think we're just going to have to see how the pieces mesh. But I will say that I think on the outside, everybody's been talking about this as like a gap year. Like, should they tank? Is it even worth it to try to make a playoff push? Because like, don't you just want to get like a good lottery pick? And it's just, this is not even like a Payton Pritchard thing. This is just the distance between fans and the media and like the actual players and coaches and the people that are competitors, and that's why they're in the position they're in. So I did ask Payton about like how he feels about next season. He had said in an interview with Chris Forsberg of NBC Sports Boston, I think it was earlier this month, that they're competing for a championship. So I asked him about that and kind of what his mindset is. And here's what he had to say.
We hear people talk about a gap year, like
there's only one mindset always, and it's like I've never been into any team in my life that the mindset wasn't to try to compete for the championship. Obviously people can say gap year and all that, but like as a competitor, that should never be your mindset, and that's not the mindset of the city of Boston either. So we'll put the pieces together, and we will come out and compete and try to win every game and put together a great season and go for a championship.
Do you feel like you have a responsibility as a leader to be like, when you hear that stuff, to be like, that's not where we're going to be, or like when you get to camp?
So like, I mean, it doesn't necessarily doesn't need to be said.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be shown through how we approach it and like how we show up. Like, it's not a gap year. It's a year to like prove, take a step, and show people that we are still that team.
So I think realistically, like a ridiculous amount of things would have to go well for the Celtics team to win the championship. Or even be in the mix. Like it's borderline unrealistic. It's borderline impossible. But at the end of the day, like basketball is a game that is, unpredictable, and pieces can come together. And if we were all able to predict who's going to be the top 8 seeds, like I put out my top seeds like for the Eastern Conference earlier this week in a garden report with Bobby, and like it's a guess. Like I thought about it. I looked through the rosters. I looked at last year. I thought about kind of how the trajectories of different teams, but it's really impossible to know. So this Celtics team, like, are they my pick for a title? Like, no, I don't think so. But this is going to be the mindset of players. Like, you bet that Jaylen Brown is going to have the same mindset. You bet that Derek White is going to have the same mindset. The part of the quote that like stood out to me the most is him explicitly saying, it's not a gap year. It's a year to prove, take a step back and show people that we are still that team. And a lot of guys are gone, but it's the exact same coaching staff. It's pretty much the same front office. Obviously Austin Ainge left right before the draft, but it's the exact same coaching staff. They didn't lose anybody from the coaching staff. And then they still have like a lot of key players from their championship team. And so I think those guys are going to want to keep the identity the same, the attention to detail, the standard of like defending and executing and all the little things that made them a championship team just a year ago. I think they're going to want to maintain that. And so that's going to be Payton's mindset. And, you heard it in his words, how he feels about next season. At the end of the day, yeah, they're not going to say like, yeah, next year's a gap year. We're just going to take it easy. Like, obviously that's not what they're going to be putting out there. But at the same time, to me, it's really obvious, like just talking to him, and I've talked to Jalen as well. Like they all have a chip on their shoulder because they hear the discourse. They hear the noise around like gap year, like take it easy, tank year. And like that's just not what they're going to do, especially coming off of the title just a year ago. And especially feeling like they still have a lot of young pieces. Like this is, if Neemias Queta becomes a double-double guy, if Baylor Shireman becomes a consistent scorer, like if these things happen that are all question marks, but it's still in players' hands, right? And they all come together and they play hard and they defend. Like you saw that Indiana Pacers team almost win the title. Like I still think they win that title if Tyrese Halliburton doesn't go down. Nobody would have had them as their pick at some point in the year when they were struggling earlier on. And things just come together. So there is still so much that we don't know. And I have this team as like, I think my prediction is like a 7 seed. So in the play-in, like battling for a playoff spot. And I don't know if that's a realistic prediction or if that's a positive prediction or a negative one. You can tell me in the comments what you think. But ultimately, I think the players are going to look at each game as an opportunity to win. And they're not going to have the same mindset and approach, especially like Joe Mazzulla at the helm. Like that's just not going to be it. And I'm curious, media days about a month away now. We're going to hear from more players and, the coach, Joe Mazzulla as well. We haven't heard from him at all this summer about what the mindset is with this new roster, because obviously I think there was a lot of confidence expressed right after they got eliminated. Torrey Craig told me like we could win a title with this group without Tatum. Like we just have to play a little differently. And it's more than just Tatum now, right? Like we have lost now, like I said, most of the rotation has left Boston this offseason in one way or another. So it's a big gap to overcome, but like he said, they're still that team. That's what they feel. And so maybe we'll look back at this and they'll start the year 0-8 and I'll be like, he said that it sounded good, but like it didn't really translate. Or maybe we're going to be like, damn, this team's actually like a top 5 team. How did nobody see this coming? And we'll go back and look at these quotes and kind of recognize that the players were telling us like, this is where we're at and this is how competitive we're going to be. And this is how we're going to approach things. And it's not something that I think it's something you turn off as a player. Like you're not going to say like, oh, this year is kind of a wash, right? Like these are guys that are in their prime, that are already under contract. They're not playing for a contract next season, which I think makes it easier to kind of focus on the right things. The other thing that I asked them about was about starting, because obviously that's been a big discussion point between him and Anthony Simons, who's going to be the starting guard. I think it's going to be Payton Pritchard for a number of reasons. One being that he's under contract for multiple seasons. So there's just more value in him proving his, fit on the Celtics as a long-term option, showing that he can play alongside Derek White. But maybe they actually find that they want more scoring in the starting lineup and Anthony Simons is shooting the ball better to start the year and they move him into the starting lineup. Or maybe defensively they're struggling and Pritchard's actually holding his own better, so they move Payton back in. I think it could go both ways. One thing that I've talked about a little bit this offseason is that we can try to predict who's going to start. I think the only ones for certain that are going to start are Derek White and Jaylen Brown. But outside of those guys, like I think Neemias Queta is going to start. I think Payton Pritchard is going to start alongside those 4. Like if they go small, it could be Sam Hauser. If they go a little bigger, it could be maybe Chris Boucher alongside Queta. So I don't know. Like it's not like an obvious starting 5 the way that some years you just know exactly what the group is going to be. But it doesn't really matter. It's one of those things that I think we talk about a lot, and sometimes the players like feed into it. Like I remember when Drew Holiday was acquired, there was a big discussion around like, was Drew going to come off the bench? Was Al Horford going to come off the bench? And obviously, ultimately, Al was coming off the bench, but then there were so many injuries that it feels like Al was basically a full-time starter. But I did ask Payton about that. Here's what he had to say about coming off the bench potentially and about how he feels about that whole discussion around starting or not starting.
It doesn't matter to me. A lot of things can change in the year, so you can start a couple games, you cannot. So for me, it's about controlling what I can control, and that's coming into the games and changing the game and being an unbelievable player and helping my team win. So that's the only thing I'm focused on ever. It's like I said, it's not about accolades, it's not about starting or anything like that. It's about how can I become the best player possible.
You've always been like that, or is that something you have to learn as you become a pro?
No, I think I've always kind of took in that mindset, but like obviously as I matured and got older, like it became more because I saw like that's how you make more progress. Is focusing on the things you can focus on rather than like other like awards and stuff like that. Like, oh, I'm chasing these numbers to be an all-star. Like that's just not who I am and never will be.
So that's Payton in his words about this whole conversation. I don't know Anthony Simons well. I mean, I've never met him, like, I've never talked to him in person. We'll hear from him in about a month when media day takes place, which is kind of crazy that it's so close. I feel like with the Celtics getting eliminated early, I was like, it's going to be a long summer, and it has not felt like a long summer. But I would imagine that Anthony Simons is going to bring in a similar mindset, because he's going to have to, right? Because, things are going to change quite a bit. I think we're going to see, like Payton said, a lot of different starting lineups for this team, and that's going to make Joe's job a little bit easier with flexibility and things like that. But we're also going to see a very different Joe, because we're used to a Joe Mazzulla where like the margin of error is really slim. Don't make a lot of mistakes. Like, Kata makes mistakes that he turns to Al, he turns to KP, he turns to Luke. This year, because of the fact that they don't have the same depth they've had in previous seasons, they are going to have to let guys play through mistakes, and try out different lineups. And probably a lot of guys in this team are going to start games at some point. I'm sure Baylor Scheinman at one point will be in the starting lineup. I'm sure Sam Hauser will play a bunch of games, honestly, as a starter. Curious to see like what that looks like, because Sam Hauser is one of the guys that draws out defenses more than any player in the NBA. There's a lot of advanced analytics that show that. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I do think Payton's going to start most, if not all, of the season. But then again, he did come off the bench last year and win Sixth Man of the Year. So there might be something to keeping him in that role. And Anthony Simons is more used to staying as a starter. So we'll see how it goes. But it was great to catch up with Payton. It's always a reminder of just like how he's always talks in kind of these very bold terms of like, we're going to be great. I want to be an unbelievable player. We're going to contend for a championship. Nothing matters except for that, basically. And he's not an accolades driven player. It's, I don't want to say that like other people are, but other people are like, they say it in their own words. I'm not even going to name specific players, but I think there's some players on the roster that are more driven for specific things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think it's fine to want to win certain awards or want to be named all-star or whatever else it is. But I think that on this team, you're going to need guys that also don't have that mindset. And I think Payton, from what I understand of him, and I don't know him on like a personal level all that well. Like I interview him and I have a good relationship with him, but maybe it's a mystery. But I always get the sense from him that he thinks he's the greatest. Like he thinks that he can be the greatest, but also is willing to do whatever it takes to win. And so I think he's one of the key things. Like when the season ended last year, and I knew that a lot of guys were going to be floating around in trade rumors, and it was really unclear who was going to be back on the roster this season. I thought to myself, like, I really want to see Payton Pritchard come back. One, because I think that his ceiling is really high and he can potentially become a borderline all-star caliber player if everything in his game clicks. But also because I truly believe that he has the ability to kind of help keep the culture, like the winning culture, the same. And it's not going to be him alone. It's going to be the coaching staff. It's going to be Joe Mazzulla. It's going to be Jaylen Brown, obviously, as the finals MVP and multiple-time all-star of this team. It's going to be Derek White, who's been a leader on both ends. But I think Payton is going to have that mindset of, like, for the younger guys, last year and the year before that, every time I would talk to younger guys and say, like, who's the mentoring you? Or, like, you signed here, like, who was the first person to reach out? Payton Pritchard is always at the top of the list. I think he's always checking on the younger guys, and especially guys that aren't playing. Like, he knows that struggle because for years he was in and out and getting DNPs and thinking that he could belong, but not really getting the opportunity because the Celtics have such a big, depth at the guard position. So it was great to catch up with him. I also have a story coming out on Celtics blog, so you can check that out, about our full conversation about the event. I love one-on-one, as I mentioned. This was a really cool one, just a great spirit, great atmosphere. The Reggie Lewis Center was a place that I played AU tournaments in growing up. It's a place that I went to events in college. So always good to be back. And this is a great use of that space. And there were a lot of people wearing Reggie Lewis jerseys, actually, which was pretty cool. Obviously, Reggie Lewis, meant a lot to the city and, passed way too young. And it's a really tragic story. I know a lot of the fans here don't need me to tell you. I know some of you lived it. Some of you were around for it. I do have an interview coming out next week with Jeff Twiss, who is the longest tenured public relations person for the Celtics, who is going to be inducted in the Basketball Hall of Fame. So you can check that out. that'll be out on New God Boston soon as well. Check out all of our content. There was a lot of stuff going on this weekend between Hugo Gonzalez, between Jaylen Brown's event. We have all that stuff up on our All Access channel. We'll have regular shows continuing on a weekly basis, if not more frequent, until the season begins. You can check out me and Bobby had a whole conversation on CLNS Media relating to where we think things are going to land next season. So you can check that out. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Subscribe, leave a review, send to a friend. It's the dead of the off season. I took a week off. I was in Iceland with my family for vacation. It was great to be out in nature and disconnected, somewhat disconnected. I'm still like checking everything and talking to people, but it was a lot of fun. So enjoy the rest of your days. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Hope you enjoyed hearing from Payton Pritchard in his own words. It'll be back with more content shortly.